The further a society drifts from the truth, the more it will hate it. Orwell, real name Arthur Blair, wrote that prophetic book, 1984. They claim it's prophetic, but Orwell was a member of the Fabian Society. That quote reminds me of the one by H.L. Mencken. The men the American people admire the most extravagantly are the most daring liars, and the men they hate most or detest most violently are those that are trying to tell them the truth. Now, this is important to understand during these times because we're drifting further and further from the truth, and now the powers that be that have been lying to us, keeping us away from this truth, are trying to silence the people telling you the truth by calling it hate speech. And you're going to buy into it because you hate the truth. Some of us do, don't we? Well, we can't handle the truth. We literally shut our brain off. We've talked about this many times, unrealistic optimism. They did a study back in 2011, hooked up people's brains to MRIs, and they found out as soon as you went someplace they didn't want to go, they just shut their brain off. They had a mental processing error. It's a form of denial. That's where we are right now, folks. There are way too many people asleep, and they're in denial. They're falling for this hate speech that everybody's trying to claim about people who are trying to tell you the truth. Everything is pretty much backwards in our society, isn't it, folks? And I want to try to help you guys put some pieces of the puzzle together. Let's take a look at the three branches of the U.S. government. The United States Constitution gives us three branches of government. Three branches. Let's think of this as a folder with folders inside it and files inside those folders. Puzzles with pieces inside of it. Some of those pieces are sub-puzzles that have more pieces in it because they're also folders. So let's take a look at this like it'd be on a computer program, a Word document. We got one Constitution. Inside that we got three branches of government. So let's say there's three folders. Now in each one of these folders we have pieces within it. There are 20 pieces in the first folder, 403 pieces in the second folder, and 14 pieces in the third folder. Let's go to the first folder. This is the legislative branch. They make the laws. Again, three branches. The legislative branch makes the laws, the executive branch carries out the laws, and the judicial branch evaluates the laws. And these are supposed to have checks and balances on each other. Now this is important. We're going to be coming back to that. So we look at the first branch of government. It's a folder. There's three folders in this one folder for the U.S. Constitution. Three branches of government. We look at the first folder and we got two folders inside of it. One folder is the Congress. There's two pieces inside there, the House and the Senate. The other folder has 18 other federal agencies that help support the House and the Senate. So a total of 20 pieces in that very first folder. We go to the second folder. This is the executive branch. Remember, they're supposed to carry out the laws. And in this category we have, or in this folder, we actually have 6 more folders. 8 in the first, 15 in the next, 260, 66, 43, and 11. That makes 403. So let's take a look at that first folder inside the executive folder file. There's 8 pieces in there. That's where we have the president, the vice president. We got 6 other offices and commissions inside that one little folder. The next folder we have has 15 files in it. That's the cabinet. Interestingly, when we had our first president, there was only 4 files in there. We only had 4 cabinet members back then. Now we have 15. These are head of agencies. And these agencies have sub-agencies, as we're going to soon find out. So again, we have 8 in the first folder. That's the office of presidency and the vice presidency and the 6 other offices. Then we got the 15 cabinet members that are head of departments. The next folder is a big one. There's 260 smaller sub-agencies and bureaus inside the executive branch. 260. If we take a look at the top 5 that I think of when I look at that, I see the CDC, the FDA, the NIH, that's the National Institutes of Health, that's Fauci. We have IRS and the FBI. The CDC is actually a sub-branch, a sub-agency of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. Let's go back to the cabinet for a second. Let's identify 5 that I think are important. We start off with the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the USDA. Then we have the U.S. Department of Justice, the DOJ. Then we have the U.S. Department of Health and Human did I just say that? Health and Human Services? Yeah, Health and Human Services, that's HHS. Then we have the Department of Education, that's the DOED. And then finally we have the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, that's the DHS. So there's 5 cabinet members there that I think we need to look at, because when we look at the very first one, the USDA, they cover up the crimes of the biotech industry. Now when we go into these sub-agencies that are in the executive branch, again, we have the CDC, they cover up the crimes of the vaccine industry. The FDA, they cover up the crimes of the pharmaceutical industry. Then of course we have the NIH and the IRS and the FBI. Now if we move on, the next category we have, there are 66 independent agencies. Again, this is part of the executive branch. It's the 3rd sub-puzzle. Remember, we have 5, 18, 260. Actually, it's the 4th one. We have 66 independent agencies. Here we have the EPA, the Fed, the Federal Reserve System. We have the CIA, and again, these are sub-agencies within this department. Next, we have 43 boards, commissions, and committees. And then we have 11 quasi-governmental agencies. Now, these, an example of this would be the Smithsonian Institute, for example. Now, this is important to understand because this is in the executive branch, and they are to carry out the laws. And then the very last folder we have in this Constitution folder with the 3 branches of government, we have the judicial branch. Here's where we have the Supreme Court, and then there are 13 other federal courts or federal agencies in that same category. So again, if we got 3 puzzles, or 3 folders inside this Constitution, we got 20 in the legislative branch, 403 in the executive branch, and 14 in the judicial branch. Make the laws, carry out the laws, evaluate the laws. In the middle, where we have all these bureaucracies, they're not allowed to make laws, they're only allowed to execute the laws. And this is what's causing us trouble in our country, here in America. And this ties back into the Fabian Society, which I've talked about many times before. Remember, Fabian Society was founded in 1884 to usher in a one-world collectivist state. It was a long-term plan to take over this planet, or take over America. If we look back at history, how it repeats itself, we look at the Bolshevik Revolution, the Russian Revolution in 1917. That's when communism took over Russia. Well, the same thing's happening now in America, folks. Except through the Fabian Society, they said, we're not going to do it through a revolution, we're going to do it through gradualism, through liberalism. We won't call it communism, or we won't call it collectivism. We'll call it liberalism, where the left of the political spectrum has gone so far over, it's on the verge of communism. That's exactly where we're at. This is what they even knew. They said that we're going to have appointed bureaucrats to take down this country. They don't have a right to make laws. We don't have to obey things when they're not laws. This is the main thing we have to understand. The sad thing about this, if we look at how this all started, or what it ties into also, it's something that Jimmy Carter put in 1978. That's the Seniors Executive Service that currently has over 1,000 governmental employees, and they work in all these different bureaucracies, and they're the heads of 75 of these bureaucracies that are designed to take over our freedoms here in America. Jimmy Carter, the year after that, is when he set up the Department of Education, where he allowed the federal government now to take charge, where before the Constitution only said that the state had a duty for education. And I read recently where Tolstoy was asked about the war that had just broken out in 1901 with Russia and Japan. An American newspaper asked Tolstoy what side he was on. He goes, well, I'm not for either one of these countries, but I'm for the working people who are being deceived by their government to do things that go against their values and their good and their religion. Interesting how Tolstoy was trying to warn the people back then about what was going on, and the same thing happened to Tolstoy that's happening to us right now who are trying to tell the truth. Oh, he's a hater, hate speech. Tolstoy's a hate speech. They excommunicated him because he knew, and he pointed out way too often, how the church was perverting the real message of Christ. Now, how would Jesus know, how would Tolstoy know the real message of Christ? Well, Tolstoy died in 1910. So he was around, he lived in the 1800s. In Germany, there were, according to Albert Schweitzer's book, The Quest for the Historical Jesus, 259 theologians in Germany trying to figure out the real message of Christ by finding out his early upbringings. How was he reared? That has everything to do with the message. And what Tolstoy was saying is exactly what I'm saying on my channel. That we live on a special world, a world that's beautiful and joyous, and what we need to do is we can and make this world more joyous and more beautiful. Not only for those who are living right now with us, but for those who live after us. The afterlife is not for us, it's for those who live after us. We're being tricked. We need to create bliss on this world now, not promising bliss in the future. This is another trick that they're using to keep us from focusing on how important it is for us to take charge. Again, the education department was taken over in 1979, and Tolstoy pointed out that he was asked at one point what he thought about compulsory education. And he said, no one has a right to have the power to control or to educate. When you give anybody the power to educate you, you give them the power to control their minds, the next generation's minds. That's exactly what's happened. That's why we're in the mess today, folks. I'm taping this on July 18th, 2021. That date's important because it's just as important for the same reason almost every date since the last 16 months is important. What's happening right now all has to do with our belief system. It could not take place if it wasn't for our belief system. This has been a long-term plan for the last 100 years to put bullshit in our brains to make us believe in things that are locking us down right now. It's our belief system. But we cling to our beliefs, and too many of us become mentally lazy and are unwilling to look at our beliefs to figure out, could it be something as simple as what I believe that's allowing them to control us the way they are? And it is. It's by design. Remember, education is a weapon whose effects depend on who holds it in his hand and who it is aimed. Joseph Stalin, in an interview with H.G. Wells in 1934, H.G. Wells, a part of the Fabian Society, published a book in 1928 called The Open Society. They're open with this. Go to the World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab. They're saying this is the Great Reset. We rebrand it. It's no longer the New World Order. It's the Great Reset. This is happening right now, folks. We got to figure out some way to make people realize what Plato meant when he said, those who tell the stories rule society. People have no idea what it takes to rule society. When you rule society, you have to understand the mob rules. You got to control the mob by putting bullshit in their brains. All you got to do to rule the world is tell more stories than anyone else. That's why the mainstream media is owned and controlled by that same small group of people that own and control everything else that brainwashes us. And you have to keep in mind that most of the patriot leaders are controlled opposition. And look what they're doing to social media now. It's called hate speech. If you come out and tell the truth, you're considered a hater. The powers that be flip everything, folks. They flip everything. They turn heroes into villains and villains into heroes. They get us to take the first step in the wrong direction. They tell us that things that are within our control are not within our control, and things that are outside our control are within our control. That's exactly what they're doing on so many levels. And none of you guys are going to be able to figure anything out, or any of this out, until you figure one thing out, and that's the real cause of disease. It's very simple. I explain it in more detail in several of my videos. I'll put links down below at the very end of this video. Healing Secrets Revealed, Medical Mysteries Revealed, along with what is the healthiest diet for humans. That will also help you understand the big picture. You have to understand that there are no cures for colds and flus. This is the area that every protocol shines because it's a self-limited disease. It always runs its course. We have colds and flus because they're body initiated once our body reaches a saturation point. Even Hippocrates knew diseases are crises of purification, of toxic elimination, auto-intoxication. We have 2 bathrooms. We eliminate. Take a solid food vacation. I got a seminar for that, and you flush all that stuff out. In the process, you also clean out the bathroom that surrounds all of our cells. A bunch of cells, 2 fluids. Blood's the kitchen, feeding it. Lymph system's the bathroom. It cleans and protects it. When we get colds and flus and pneumonia, our lymph system, which is that other fluid, is simply backing up. The simple solution is to clean your bathrooms. And if you don't understand what the real cause of disease is, then you're going to be part of the problem that exists right now, because you're going to believe what mainstream media is telling us. And you'll even believe a lot of what you hear in alternative media. Very few people really understand the real cause of disease. Even if they understand auto-intoxication is an issue, they still don't really understand that it's mainly our bathrooms. If the colon gets plugged up, leaky gut syndrome is going to seep back through osmosis. It's going to go back into the body and pollute the body. It gets into the interstitial fluids, the fluid that surrounds all of our cells. When it doesn't get filtered, it backs up. If it goes above a toleration point, it backs up. I explain all that, Disease Mysteries Revealed. Again, watch my video, the link down below. I go into much more detail. There's 2 short-term self-limited diseases and 4 long-term stages of disease. Colds and flus, there's no such thing as a cure or a magical injection of some sort that's going to prevent this. It's a lie. Diseases are body-initiated. They're part of the healing process. This is why doctors don't know anything. They're told that correlation is causation. Remember, when you go to a primary care physician and he finds something wrong with you, he says, I'll send you to a specialist. They got 130 of those. They don't study the concept of totality. So if you got problems with your eyes, you're not going to know that your kidneys aren't filtering, and now your lymph system isn't getting filtered, and now it's backing up and going to your eyes, and you got eye problems. They don't know that. Instead, they'll give you some tests, and they'll send those tests off to 13 pathologists, who are then going to diagnose what you got. Because look what we found. We looked for evidence. We found some skid marks at the scene of the crime. Got some flies over here at this garbage. Mosquitoes over here in the stagnant water. We found the cause. Correlation does not equal causation. That's why the germ theory disease has never been proven. Because you're not going to always find flies around all the garbage. Why doesn't this garbage have flies? Because the flies didn't cause it. The flies are the consequence. Our experts have no clue as to what's really happening. You can figure that out, folks. Take a solid food vacation. Clean out this bathroom. In 1 week, the average person I coach, the average guy loses 10 pounds, the average woman 7 pounds. They're changing their terrain. Germ theory, terrain theory. Change the terrain. Microbes aren't a problem. Cholesterol is not a problem. Heart disease, cancer, arthritis, diabetes. These warning signs go away because we're no longer making the mistakes. Once you understand the real cause of disease, then you'll understand the raw food, cooked food connection, our perspective. And you'll never figure anything out unless you understand that, because otherwise you're going to be fighting shadows in Plato's cave. That's what everyone's doing. It's all downstream. Much of what we do, even now, trying to help people understand what's going on, we're fighting shadows because we're not addressing the root cause. Remember, we got to go upstream and find out, why do we have a subsequent need for government? Why do we have a subsequent need for money? Why do we have a subsequent need for education? And then those are being used against us. We have those because we stopped eating biophotons. It's that simple. There's only one solution to get us out of the mess we're in right now, folks. We have to understand the importance of eating our biophotons. When we limit our food to only eating biophotons, we limit all of our food selections and choices. And when we limit our foods, when we eat to live, we have abundance. But when we live to eat, when we have unlimited food selections, we live in a limited world. A world that has sick people controlling the rest of us, keeping us sick. And it's only going to get worse unless we wake up. There is a solution to get out of this. It's a bottom-up solution. And it's never going to happen unless we reach the tipping point. Never before has there been a time when enough people have to wake up and do the right thing and find out the real cause of the disease. I guarantee you clean out those bathrooms, most of your problems are going to go away. You've got to also understand the power of those biophotons and why we have so many subsequent needs that are used against us, because we're no longer eating biophotons. Something's wrong with us, folks. We're supposed to have 6 senses, not 5, and a little bitty part of that 6th sense. That's why we struggle. Not to mention Victor Hugo's serpent in the belly. That's what's contributing to the problems we have right now. We are the enemy, folks. We're doing it to ourselves. The sickest of us are preying on the sickest of us, or on the rest of us who are sick. And they only represent the edges of a bell. Can't cut those edges off. The bell's got to change. We got to play our role. We got to wake up and realize how powerful what we do, how powerful that is, the things we do relative to solving the problem that we face on this planet. Everything top down is going to be horrible for us. It always has been. As I've mentioned in many of my videos, we are the enemy. The mob is out of control. It's called autocracy. That's what created a need for government. Now we're in the dependency stage of democracy. I've explained this before in other videos. I'll put links down below to these. Where now the mob is once again the ones that are controlling the planet. Those who tell the stories rule society. The stories Plato's are talking about are the stories told to the mob, the masses that don't know any better. And when they're told things to do, they believe it because they have a belief system that doesn't understand the real cause of disease. Again, most important thing you can do for yourself is to learn the real cause of disease and then help other people find that out. And when you go through that transformation, you see things so much better. You're able to connect dots so much better. And we won't live in the kind of world we live today. My gosh, I was hearing Tolstoy's version of our school he started. This is how all of our schools should be. Think about this. You could come and go as you please. You get to choose what you want to study. Nothing's compulsory. There are no tests, no rewards, no punishments, no learning by heart. Again, you can come and go as you please. Tolstoy said, the pupil brings with him, the pupil brings to class only everything except himself, his rational mind, and his certainty that today is going to be as much fun as it was yesterday. Could you imagine going to a school that you knew it's going to be as much fun as it was yesterday? I can come and go as I please. I get to study what I want to study. Don't have to take any tests. I don't have to memorize anything. This is how we're supposed to be living, folks. Tolstoy had the right idea. And he knew there's the first step. And I talk about that a lot. Did a video, The First Step to Paradise. Remember, I'll tell the story again. It's a good one. Tolstoy equated humanity to a two-story house. And most of us are on that bottom floor. The evil life, we're addicted to the evil way of life. We're gluttons. We have no self-control. Christians call it self-renunciation. To get to the second level, the good life, there are values and virtues, and these are in a sequence. You can't skip them. Too many of us focus on the higher virtues, not realizing the value of that very first step. Tolstoy's first step was a water fast, a solid food vacation on water, to take back control of the things that are controlling us. Because when we eat biophotons, we have abundance. When we don't eat biophotons, we have scarcity. It's that simple. But you're not going to be able to go from not eating biophotons to eating them right away. You got to do something on a temporary basis. You either take a solid food vacation on water, as Tolstoy did, or you do it the way we do now because of the way our society and ourselves have been damaged. You take a solid food vacation on juices, and I guarantee you, when you do that, you're in for a treat.